Welcome back for another episode of the Office Hours Podcast with Professor Brad Perkins. Today, in town engineering, in one of the small, tiny little rooms, not in our big studio, but nonetheless, we'll have a good discussion. I have Nick Roberts, one of my former Connie 241 TAs.
Very former. Yep.
Very former. It's been a minute. It has been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Okay, it's been a minute. My TA and one of our alumni, formerly of Turner Construction, and now currently in sales in Victaulic.
Correct. Yep.
All right. So, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Hey, thanks for taking the time and the various iterations
That's
to get here.
It's part of the process, so it's good.
Hey, so I had you come in today to talk about sales engineering as an occupation,
right,
as a profession, and if you could tell them how did you get from, town engineering to construction and then ultimately in sales, because you were a building emphasis.
Correct.
Okay.
Building emphasis. Yep.
All right. So talk me through that.
Yeah. So again, I mentioned this earlier. It's good to be back here. It's good to be in the walls. We mentioned I gave a rash of crap to you about the ping pong table being missing. So those that don't know that, it's missing. So I graduated in 2010 and started my career with Turner in the GC side, mostly field management and project management stuff, and enjoyed that. And then it took me around the country to a few different projects based out of Kansas City, but traveled about, and ended up in St. Louis working for a casino. We had a partnership with Penn Gaming, and we renovated one, and that was great. And I got to the end of that, and I decided, what's a different opportunity? My wife now lives in St. Louis, and so I was looking to potentially stay there and explore these other options. Sales had always kind of interested me, but I didn't know how to get into it in construction, or whether it was even a job. Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah. And on the GC side, though, you saw things like, hey, that guy's a representative of this organization or working here, and I found it intriguing. So I was like, hey, how do I do that without a mechanical background, to your point, or other things, like just starting in construction? So I Monster.com, we joked about it earlier, which I don't think it's around, construction sales, and Victaulic. That's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. It said. Yeah, it came up, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. What is that?" And that was just over a decade ago, and I was able to take the leap to that place and started really in the field working for us as we call line sales, and working with the local mechanical contractors, plumbers, things like that, with also distribution, and then some measure of owner and engineering responsibility.
That had to be a pretty steep learning curve, though, right?
Well, so it's
because you're not dealing with plumbers and pipes.
No,
and stuff,
had I come and no discredit to your class, which was really the only exposure I had to those trades in before that, because even in my internships, it was 2 years in bridge building in Florida, right, and then one summer doing commercial work down in Florida with very limited MEP. So coming out, that would have been tough. What I was fortunate enough with, though, when my jobs, or the projects we worked on, significant like stadiums, things like that, I took a liking to the MEP trades and what they had to offer. And a lot of guys are in that role, or concrete and drywall, right? So it was kind of a unique exposure. So when I came in, I understood well enough some of those things, and also who to go to learn from, which was probably the most important. But honestly, you learn early that it's about knowing the industry and being able to speak a little bit of the language and understand how to navigate a project, a set of drawings, things like that. And that was good.
Well, a lot of it would just have to be, I just got to be able to learn.
Exactly.
I got to learn how to learn. I got to be able to figure this out.
Exactly. And besides the internships that Iowa State provided me, which really developed my professional skills early, that's what Iowa State helped teach me, is how to learn, right? Or where to go for information. Because at the end of the day...
Wait a minute. Are you saying that if I give you an assignment and it's kind of vague, and you have to figure some stuff out along the way, that's actually a good thing?
I think you're leading the witness there, but yeah, 100%, man. That's, even setting up you did a great job and some challenges here, even setting this up. But problem solvers is what our industry is laden with, and the ability to do that with some measure of willingness to ask the question is really all it takes, right? And you can learn if you're willing to. No one has the answer for this complicated thing that is construction, right? So that helped a ton, right? And so, but it was a big learning curve. Pipe was new to me. Understanding the impact and how it's installed was learned, but you was able to just go to those that knew, the old heads that had been doing it a long time with a lot of hand skill, but also a lot of knowledge, and they're really willing to help you. And I leaned into that early, and it's really helped me since, right? So,
all right. Well, okay. So you took the job in sales. I mean, what would you say? Because that's that is a big leap. And what's the part that you like about it? What is there parts that you miss? Is it what's the difference,
Sure.
and what are the best parts of the difference, or the worst? Or
What I miss, we were kind of chatting on the walking in, is really to see something get built that you could really put your arms around, right, and be a part of, with the camaraderie in the field trades doing it, seeing it from day one, and then coming up out of the ground and going to family members and saying, I helped build that thing, even though on the GC side you don't really build much at all, but you're a part of the structure that drives it, right? So I miss that, and I miss the day-to-day involvement in that sort of thing. The day-to-day grind, however, is a little bit of a thing that I don't miss, and beating up subs and battling over change orders like that, I don't miss, right? Okay. On this side,
that's fair. I could definitely see that.
Exactly. But it's funny, on the flip side, what I like about this role is I still get to see things be a part of it. And additionally, I get to be part of a lot of things, different projects, and also various scope of work of projects ranging from a K through 12 high school to a multi-megawatt, 100 megawatt plus data center or a life science building. And so you get a lot of exposure to different expertise and people and participating there. But there's still some of the same grind. You're negotiating things. It's not. So it's you take a lot of the similarities. We didn't mention this earlier, but one thing that really, and my, at the time, president and CEO who mentioned, like, hey, why did you come over? Or what was the interest? And I didn't really realize when you're in the GC role and managing projects, I think a lot of people don't really, you're selling every day, right?
That's
or influencing every day, right?
You're influencing every day. But I think that's true for if you're in a business, you're selling.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, you are. Yeah, you are. You always got to be looking at.
Indeed.
And if you don't, personal opinion, but if that's not how you approach every day, I think you're probably approaching it wrong.
I couldn't agree more. Yep.
Because if you're not selling, you got to be selling yourself.
Sure.
As the person that solves problems, as the person, like if you're at a GC, where a client says, I got that next project. Who am I going to have build it?
Right.
Selling yourself, and maybe even selling yourself for that next job.
Indeed. But that's in the direct, like the indirect sales, even that I learned. You're in, like, let's say an architect wants to build something a certain way and it doesn't work for the job. You have to kind of negotiate an RFI strategy and an adjustment to meet the budget. And there's all these nuances that you're influencing every day that you can bring to it. But the other thing I love about what I'm doing now that I was worried about, because there was trepidation coming into sales. I never done it before.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's not even something that we really, I can't think of one part of any of our classes that even talks about engineering sales.
Yeah, that was a question I did have. What does the infrastructure here look like around? And I know this is maybe the first exposure to it, but is there any discussion in this building about this particular approach to the industry?
No.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I mean, where would we put that in the class?
Sure, it's fair.
Okay. Yes, we talk about pumps and pipes and all those things,
sure.
but not engineering sales as a profession. I mean, here today, I was telling the students, hey, I got this guy coming in. If you're interested in engineering sales, it might be good to listen to. And several of them were like, what's that? Is that job?
Yeah. I didn't know either. Right. Yeah.
But I and I'm biased, and everybody knows I'm biased on this, but I would have to think that a construction engineering degree sets you up pretty well for that.
Yeah.
Because you get the engineering side, but you also get the construction and the estimating and all that and all that other stuff.
Indeed.
So I would think it sets you up pretty good.
To that effect, like a lot of the people, my predecessors, really good salespeople, really awesome individuals, a great organization. But a lot of them came from, athletics in college and business degrees and things like that, more traditional sales approach. Since we've gotten more complex and involved in projects the way we are today, we are looking to recruit out of areas like this that have a construction background and teach them the skills. As long as you're a good intellectual person and you're willing to adapt and ask great questions and want to bring value, you can do this gig, right? And it's changed a little bit of the approach because having a knowledge of this challenging industry is good.
I
right?
can see that. I could absolutely see that it'd probably be easier to take an engineer and teach them sales than to take a business major and try to teach them hydraulics and pipe and flow and pumps.
Potentially. The one thing I would say, some people just don't want it, right? I think more commonly than not, and it's probably oversimplifying it, but people don't like that social necessary engagement that goes into it. But I think we do sell some folks short just based on the title of their role that they could or couldn't do this. And we're finding talent all over the place, right? And engineering backgrounds or construction management backgrounds presents a lot of that. And a lot of them are great people that have the social skills to drive it to and like it, right?
Well, there's that's probably something. Actually, I was literally joking with one of the classes. It's like, okay, are you interested in engineering sales? Do you have the technical ability? Do you have the background? Can you do the math, do the stuff, answer questions to other technical people like engineers that want answers? But then, can you play golf and drink beer? You know, I don't know. I mean, I'm just teasing.
No, those are the two ends. You're not wrong.
Okay,
You're not wrong.
okay.
There's parts of that to everywhere, right?
You know, years ago, I was at MCA convention, right? And one of the faculty members from, I think it was Maryland, they couldn't make it. And so they had the local train rep was the faculty advisor for that week at the convention. And so us faculty advisors hung out, and we were at Orlando, you know, at Disney.
Nice.
And all of us were going, you know, to Pleasure Island stuff. This guy was amazing to watch, right? Because we're at Pleasure Island, and he knows the name because we kind of ran into a bunch of contractors that were from the East Coast. We're in one of the bars at Pleasure Island, and he is buying drinks for all sorts of people, and the whole time he is on. It's like, hey Mike, hey, did you get that bid on that chiller project? Hey, let's talk when we get back to Maryland. You know, hey, how about that air handler? You know, and he's like, he knows everybody.
You got to love that part too. You have to.
He knows everybody. He knows their names, and he knows their projects.
Yep.
I'm like, I'm watching this, and he's doing all this while he's buying more drinks than I can imagine. I'm like, oh, dude, I'm getting tired. I cannot be doing this.
Well, there's an art to not having too many when you're offering to others too, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that he was walking that line. He was obviously social.
Sure.
I mean, legitimately, you could tell he really liked this.
Right.
You know, like, and he liked talking to people, and he liked going out, and he liked all this stuff. But he also had the background where it's like, hey, that's a 1,000-ton chiller. We should look at this. And, oh, you're looking at this, you know, air handler, and, you know, let's look at this option. And, I mean, he was always selling.
Yep.
But he also had that social part. And I think that's what I was saying in class is that if you like the engineering side, legitimately, you know, you like that part, and you like the social interaction, the getting to know people, the solving problems, the communication part, engineering sales might be a thing for you.
It's a great comment, and it's a good way to present it if it's not being presented. Because what I also say, too, that's a very traditional sales guy. I would think that's good at our industry that has the technical background and also can work a room. And that's, you know, great people can do that well in this. But there are different flavors and strokes for folks, and we're looking at unique personalities that are willing to bring value in different ways that people might be afraid of. Hey, I got to go be that guy on stage at the bar and be on all the time, right?
Yeah.
But there is a piece of that you need to be on for, and that's something that you either love or sometimes can wear you down. But if you do like those two elements in some capacity, this is great because you can scratch both itches very nicely, and it's rewarding, and you're still involved in the construction process and bringing value, right? So.
Well, and it's got to be, you got to have the ability at one minute, you got to be able to talk to the plumber.
Yep.
And in the other minute, you got to be able to talk to the designer, you know, with degrees and all this other stuff. You know, you got to be able to talk to both at the same time, right?
You do, and that's especially early on in my career. That's how I learned. But also, you'd be, you know, wearing a jacket and doing a lunch and learn presentation for an engineer about pipe movement design and thermal expansion, and then 2 hours later you're fixing a groover, helping a guy with a groover in the field because the head broke and he's getting too much flare in the pipe, and being able to understand both sides and bring value to both and speak to them in a way that they want to be spoken to is important, right?
Well, and I know from you know, my time as a consultant, or if we had a lunch and learn and a sales rep came in and it was obvious they didn't know what they were talking about, you'd literally mentally you'd be like, I am never buying, you know, that's out of our spec.
So you can make that, and I see this, but for you would make that determination immediately then, right?
Almost immediately. Immediately.
Fair.
Well, here from an engineer standpoint, you don't have a lot of time to fool around.
No, and you guys are on billable hours, or folks that are in that, right?
You're on billable hours, so you need answers. And here's the thing: if you don't have faith in the person that's giving you answers, the problem is that no owner is going to buy that. Well, the sales rep told me this,
right?
So I'm going to blame them. That will
it's their
work.
Stamp and their responsibility.
Yeah, it's their
right?
stamp and their responsibility.
What I'm finding though too, and we are kind of talking about this a little bit earlier, but as we're moving, not only have the answers, but also be just good at understanding questions and ask probing questions to learn, because pain points exist. But a lot of guys we're talking to in the engineering side, the owner client side, they don't even necessarily always know the specifics that are impacting them, and the ability to identify. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I was just looking.
Making
That's
sure.
all right.
Okay, making sure we're good. The ability to identify those challenges that they may not even understand is a key part of the job. And they're like, oh, that's a problem? I didn't know that. And, the Industrial Revolution 2.0 is upon us, and it's constructed, right?
Let's talk about this Industrial Revolution, because while we were talking earlier, I was talking about like a presentation that we just had from Cherney coming out of the Houston area, and they presented to our MCA student chapter, and they're talking about the newest, latest, and greatest projects that they're doing, and there's like this massive boiler plant for this hospital in Detroit.
And, Henry Ford, big one.
Yeah, the Henry Ford one. Yeah, that's exactly the one they were talking about, which is fascinating to me. They are paying for the plant for this hospital, and then once it's built, they're going to operate it and then lease it to the hospital.
P3. That's the way. The scope is getting so large and the cost is so expansive that this is a very real new approach to central plant utility design.
Talk about that for a second, because that is not, while in class I talk about boilers and chillers and central plant stuff, but not so much the management and upkeep and the ongoing.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So what's nice is that's a great thing for us. Speaking for Victaulic, we make a lot of sense in those spaces, whether it's ease of install, long-term, maintenance of the system. We get a unit every joint, whether it's the long-term, infinite repurposability of it if you need to upgrade and make changes. So that's a good space. But in general, like the Henry Ford's an example, or these major central plants that are putting out, tons of cooling that we haven't seen for large campuses, and they're growing. The cost of construction is getting so high, and the project scope is getting so big that what we're seeing is these entities break that off from not only design but a turnkey solution, and then go to private money to afford it. Whether you're a university, you're a hospital, and then own it like you would a toll road in Florida,
like a toll road.
Same type of thing, but for energy for 30 years. Right? It's unique, and it's coming.
Okay, so actually, I was having this conversation with some students afterwards, because sometimes people come in and they give these presentations, but a student might be hearing stuff for the very first time, or maybe like the freshman never heard anything about this. Anyway, I was talking with some of the seniors, and I'm like, what do you suppose they're leasing that to the hospital for? What would be an expected rate of return? And I know there's no way that we would. No, and
it's all. This. I think it's similar. So you look at central utility in a city, like the city of Austin's on like the Austin Energy or whatever it's called. Yeah. And you put a building on the grid, and you're paying for the BTUs or the tons of cooling that your facility uses at some negotiated rate, right?
Right.
That is, I believe, the similar infrastructure. They got different strategies, but then they pay not only to build it, which is a big capital expenditure, but then that entity, or they hire an entity to then manage it separately, and all the maintenance cost goes under that umbrella, and the university or the hospital or the data center, whomever, is paying for that product and that service, and to remove the headache, right? And so,
that's exactly it. But there's the thing: what are they paying to remove the headache? And there's got to be a reason Warren Buffett owns Mid-American Energy.
It's a great comment. It's a great example,
right? Yeah, because he doesn't do it he doesn't do it to break even. He doesn't even do it to do okay.
But I don't want to speak for end users. It's a great conversation if you're going to talk to a hospital. Like in just passing, we just had a really cool summit in Omaha, or outside of Lincoln actually last week, and brought a bunch of, we call it the Silicon Prairie, because the Midwest, you mentioned Altoona, and there are campuses for data centers, and what's happening in Omaha. A bunch of stakeholders, owners from major hyperscalers, which are the Googles, the Metas, those kind of players. From the site management side, we got some general contractors and some consulting engineers get together and have a discussion about challenges of construction of these major projects, right? Well, to your point, why are they, what's in it for them? Even the human resources to manage this, to get people qualified to run those. The unknown ends up being better, the devil I know versus the devil I don't. And it's an attractive thing for these guys who are good at this one thing or a version of these to just say, you know what? I own it. I'm good at managing a hospital, let's say, or running the facilities on the cooling of a space and how an OR goes. I can, but this scope, give me your shot. So is there money in it? Sure. But it seems like it's becoming more and more worth it for these guys to leverage that and to get the upfront funding, right?
But it makes sense as the hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, I absolutely get it because as the hospital's on the hook for the first cost. Yes, that would probably be cheaper if we amortize this over the next 25 years. Would it be cheaper? Would it not? But you know what? The hospital is not in the business of mechanical systems. They're in the business of operations,
sure,
and patients and those types of things. I absolutely get it. They're like, you know what? It'd be better if I just knew what this cost was every month and I just paid it. And then I let someone else worry about leaking pipes and broken boilers and, and efficiencies and BTUs and all this other stuff. It makes perfect sense.
Yep.
It makes perfect sense. But it's getting very, 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 very specialized. And the one thing that I took from that discussion with Cherney is, they're talking about how the data center that he was working on is this $5 billion data center
with a B, yeah.
with a B, and it's like, I'm like, excuse me, did you say billion? I'm old. I'm in the back of the room. Maybe I didn't hear that right. He's like, yes, billion. He goes, and we've got 4 or 5 others in the Gulf Coast area going on right now. I'm like, part of me was like, how do you even bond that?
That's
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The level of, so I mentioned the Industrial Revolution 2.0 and data
Yes.
centers, the big one.
Yeah.
That is really the driver, is the unprecedented scale, amount, and scope of construction happening to support that business, because data is
man.
obviously the most valuable resource that we have over oil now, right? And a lot of that's being driven here. We had a little conversation about power and its inability to be on the grid, and that's a whole conversation we can have. But from the infrastructure of building these jobs, it is taking not a village, but a whole army of people to do these, and they're popping up everywhere. You said 5 billion,
yeah,
and I think you said it was
billion.
a 500 megawatt facility. That's power supply, right,
Yes.
to drive it.
Yeah.
2-3 years ago, that would be an enormous number. Now that's an average to above average large facility. We're seeing these things get to 1 to 2 gigawatts. Which
Really?
Gigawatts of size and
Gigawatts.
power demand for the grid, and then for our space, the cooling to cool those loads at a degree we've never seen. AI is exploding this thing, man. It's really taking it and hyper drove it, right?
Just look at, in the past 20 years since I've been teaching, and obviously I'm here in academia, so that means I'm focusing on fundamentals, not on where the cutting edge is in the industry. We're not, our job is not to take students and make them ready for the cutting edge. We're trying to teach them good, solid fundamentals so that they can learn whatever that is.
Right.
Okay. So with that being said, if you look at one of the last projects that I did before coming here to teach, was this data center for the Army National Guard in Johnston, right, for Camp Dodge. And at that time, they were talking about, a room that would have been like 1 or not even 2 classrooms in size. And it's packed full of servers and these, with these racks and these blade servers. And they're talking about a power consumption, because I'm trying to figure out, well, how much cooling are we going to do? And he's like, yeah, the IT geek for that design. It's like, yeah, we're going to need like 25 watts per square foot of floor space. That's what we're going to be using. And I was like, no, you're not. And he's like, yeah, I am.
Shocking to you then, right?
No, shocking.
Right? Yeah.
Like, at the day in 2005, it's like, no. I said no.
Those same geeks own islands now, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, those same geeks own islands.
They do, yeah.
And I'm still wearing the same shirt.
I love that. That's an old school. I love that, by the way.
I wore this for you.
I love that.
Right? The old Iowa State.
When I was here is when they did away with the old side and put the I State on, which I like, but that holds near and dear to the heart.
I probably wore this to class, like when you were a student.
Well, it holds up great.
I never throw anything. I'm a guy. You never throw
yeah, right. You never.
Okay, that's why it's more of a cherry red than it is a crimson red. Right?
Faded.
Well,
at least there's not holes in it like underwear. Like those last too long too. This still looks good.
It still looks but it's because we've changed colors over the years. Every time we get a different football coach, it's like the color changes slightly.
Well, we got ours for a few years now. That's good news for us.
That is good.
Yeah,
that is good.
Campbell.
But if you look at that, it's like, okay, he's like, yeah, it's 25 watts a square foot, and it's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's outrageous. Are you serious? There's no way that we can cool it, and what kind of equipment are we going to get? And I mean, just on and on. It was just kind of crazy. And now you look at that and you're like, that is so boring. Is that somebody's office?
It's not boring. It's funny because it's really just scale. Well, it's just scale, right?
Okay.
And you mentioned, so another big part of what we're trying to accomplish, we're in the piping business, right? We give a solution to mechanically adjoined pipe versus traditional methods, and a lot of technical things to go around that evaluate for a different day. But it's very interesting to us because we're using water to cool these spaces. Even 5-10 years ago, evaporative cooling, right? Like it was, or swamp coolers. And this is just exploding. 3 years ago, we were looking at 10 to 20 kilowatts of heat output per rack.
Per rack.
Which is exponents above what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. exponents,
Yes.
exponents, because a rack is going to be about the size of the table we're at.
Times the,
I mean, on area, right?
whatever,
but I mean,
right,
you
yeah.
know, it'll be 7 feet, 8
times
feet tall.
maybe 20, 30 in a row or whatever it is, right?
Right.
And that was a major demand before, and we had to switch from evaporative cooling to liquid cooling, facility cooling with aisle containment, right? So you're blowing air across the aisle, but it's going through heat exchangers through the main large piping facilities on chilled and condenser water. Well, because of AI, that 10, 20, 30 is upwards of 60, 80, and some of the numbers we're looking at now, and I confirmed this before I came back in here, 136 to 250 kilowatts per rack. With the potential to get up to 400 maybe long-term and roadmap because of AI.
Okay, here, let me, all right.
Yeah.
Just in case there's a student, and you know, maybe some of my students end up watching this, and you're saying like, okay, 250 kilowatts in a rack.
Yep.
Let us back up. We could power a residential house that's about 3,000 square feet on a 10 kilowatt backup generator and have power to spare. You could run on 10 kilowatts, you could run your air conditioner, your refrigerator, all your TVs, everything, and have power to spare at 10 kilowatts.
And this is probably doing all those things automatically 10 trillion times a second. That's like the whole point of this thing, right?
Is it? I mean, that's what's shocking,
it's shocking
about this.
It's shocking. You get numb to it, but even though like every day it'll be a new opportunity, like this is crazy, right?
Yeah.
But it is still we were talking a bit earlier too about the fact that it's still crazy for the people doing it. So like traditionally there's a lot of options, but we come in handy is like, hey, let's evaluate new solutions, even though we've been around for 100 years, right?
Well, 20 years ago, the idea of taking water straight to a rack was blasphemy.
But
you would never do.
3 years ago, it was unheard of because you didn't want it in the white space, right? Yeah. But because of these exponential growth with especially AI, they got to bring water into the space in a unique way they never had because the demand just requires it.
Well, because and I knew this was coming. I mean, well, it's not that I had any special insight. Every engineer knew this was coming because they're like, we are getting to a point where the computers produce more heat than we can remove with air.
100%. We're there now. We
are there.
Yep,
it is here. It is here. It's not like a theory.
Yep.
I mean, but 5 years ago it was a theory. It's like, well, that's going to happen someday. Well, but then we were like, well, maybe 10, 20 years from now that'll happen. No, it's 2.
But it's funny, go back to Connie 241 and 352, your classes. Yeah. Water is still, outside of some unique inert gases and oils, but in general, the most effective way to transfer heat in and out of a space and, to cool to an area, right? Air just gets so much less economical. We're to a point now where we're treating a rack like a fan coil unit in a hospital, and that's how it's operating. But it's still fundamentally the same thing.
Well, it is. It is. You got something making heat, and I got to cool it down.
Yep.
So I got to bring the water to it.
Exactly.
Right? And now you're doing it individually.
Yep.
Oh my Lord.
It's interesting. It's been fun though. It's been conducive to what we do because of our modular and the speed to market and the ability to give more resources per head, basically in terms of the skilled labor shortage. It's been good for us too, and good for the industry to challenge themselves to meet this battle. Right
now, there's something interesting to talk about our industry right now. Is that it's fascinating. The technical demands. I'm not talking about the technical demands for the engineer. I'm talking about the technical demands for the guy in the field.
Yeah.
They have to be so much better than they would have 20 years ago. The training
faster. It's
faster.
Crazy faster. Yeah.
Right. But our problem is that we have not enough people to do it.
And those that we have are retiring that have the skill required to do it the way we'd like. So there's less people, a higher demand for people by a degree we haven't seen, and the really good people are transferring out. Not enough people are getting into the trade, right? So it's a major snowball effect, right?
If we look at like last week, I do technical training for Baker Group here in Ankeny, right? And it's their technicians. It's their technicians, not. Maybe they've had a little bit of community college, right? And I'm giving them essentially the same class minus the homework as I teach in 352. I'm like, okay, you need to know this and you need to know this. And the guy running the training, he's like, yeah, we need to talk about this and this. We need to talk about primary, secondary chill water systems. And we need to talk about different refrigerants. And, we need to talk about things like hot gas reheat and, on and on and on.
Bingo. Yep.
We spent 2 hours just talking about dedicated outdoor air systems, and this is to the technicians, not the engineers. This is to the field techs. And they're like, hey, this is awesome. We need to do more of this training.
Yeah.
Because this is what our guys need. And to my point is that construction is becoming so much more complicated.
So much.
I mean, here, let's look in your career, not mine, yours. Let's talk about how much construction has changed since you graduated.
What I've seen to that point is, besides the fact that the demand for, because everyone's gotten really good, and the only problem with getting good is then you have to get better because the competition stays with it, and the speed with which owners of any description demand a job. Things that used to take maybe 3-4 years is now 1, 2, 3 years. I mean, you're just crunching that, and the complexity, your point, and demands are just much higher. So it's more complicated and it's faster. What's been cool that I've seen, and it was really kind of burgeoning when I started, I think, and it was a little bit before, but really offsite manufacturing and construction to support that has really grown. And now it's just a need. You have to do it in all trades, otherwise you're not going to be able to keep up. And so that's exponentially grown, right?
When we went last fall to Seattle, MCA, Mechanical Contractors of America, are great Futures Forum. So we got a good tour of one of the largest mechanical contractors in Seattle. And you know what they showed us? They showed us their prefabrication. Yep. I mean, just, putting together entire boiler plants, put them on a skid, put them on a semi, ship them out. Baker Group at Ankeny, I was just there. They're talking about their manufacturing. They're actually selling stuff to other contractors in other states. 2.5 years ago, when we were in Boston, one of the biggest mechanical contractors there, they were doing entire hospital rooms in their shop. I mean, like the finishes, the tile, everything.
Drop it in place and you're done.
Right? Because it was so mechanical intensive, they took the lead on it. And they also did electrical. So they do, all the patient wall where they got all the connections. And now they got flexible connections they just wheel the whole room in, drop it into place, connect up the electrical and the mechanical in like a manifold, and boom, they're done. And they're building most of these rooms in their shop.
Yep. Out of necessity, maybe, but also it's a good sales strategy to do that well, right? But some of these jobs, in piping, our industry, at least mechanically, I don't think that you can survive just in these major scope of work without some version of that at a high level, right? And so I'm glad to see that that's growing, but it's only going to continue to grow because, to your point, no matter how many people we're training in, there's less coming in, right?
And so too many. Well, there is. There's too many. And you know what happened? You know what you're the beneficiary of? You graduated in 2010, right?
Yep.
Yeah. What happened?
Well, that was what happened in 2008, you're saying?
Yeah,
08, I remember everyone here had a job in 2008. All the seniors did.
Yeah,
they had 8 or 9 offers, and then that was a rough stretch, man.
It was
tough.
But you know how you're the beneficiary of that? Here, let me explain. So you toughed it out. Okay, you graduated in 2010, and you know what happened in 2008 and 9 and 10? People went elsewhere other than construction.
Fair, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And what happened is all the freshmen, all the sophomores in that time, their parents were like, "Hey, could you maybe pick something else other than construction? Maybe let's look over here." And so, about the time you were graduating, a lot of people left our industry and didn't come back. So what happens? You get a job in construction, and now you've got a whole plethora. To this day, you've got a plethora of choices because your peer group is only at about, 50, 60%.
Yeah. Wow.
And the people older than you are aging out. They're like, people my age.
Sure.
I'm in my 50s. I'm not quite there.
But no one wants to run construction jobs late into their 60s anyway, right?
Exactly,
so, yeah, it's
exactly.
just,
But what my point is, those people are leaving.
Yep.
The people older than you are leaving. The people that should be there with you aren't there. You know what that means? That means a whole lot of opportunity for you and everybody that's come after you.
Couldn't agree more. And it's a great point. I never thought of it quite, because I think about it in the trade sense, as far as the management side or whatever version, pre-con, et cetera, the project operations, general contracting, et cetera. I never thought of it that way, right? It probably was a bit of a mass exodus at that point.
Oh, yeah, look at it.
And it's still a challenge, right? We've seen a lot of kids I graduated with, kids now, they're adults with families, but in high-level roles doing well. They're smart people, but there's a demand for that, to your point, that you didn't really see at the time because it was challenging, right?
Because the people from, let's call it age 30 to 40 that should be there aren't.
Yeah.
So people in their 20s to this day are still benefiting from this because they'll start and then they will move up so fast. I mean, like it'll seem like light speed to guys my age.
Sure.
You know, it's like, wait a minute, you're a project manager already? I mean, didn't you just graduate? What
They're
the
just
hell?
writing your name in the toilets on site.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what was it? Oh my Lord! It was like by a couple semesters ago. One of my TAs, 241 TA, right? Super great kid, but no experience in the world at all, right? And he gets a job now. It's traveling, right? But by the time he gets per diem and everything, he's making as much as I am here at the university, and I have a PE license and all these experience,
Sure.
And I don't disparage him. I want him to get it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I want him to get it. I want our graduates because, let's be honest, it's harder than ever. Cost-wise, I mean, the world isn't getting cheaper.
No,
So-
and neither is this particular
and
type of
neither
thing,
is
right?
this- neither is this particular
Its value
type of thing.
proposition needs to stay strong too, right?
It does.
University, sure.
It absolutely does. And I would like, I mean, I am biased, but I do think Iowa State is still a really good value proposition.
Couldn't. Your kid that was in here, your
Yeah.
student, I should say,
Yeah.
was in here today that was doing the extra credit. And
Yeah.
he was mentioning, like, it's a piece of paper. I'm like, man, it's so much more than that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And, you mentioning, like, tying it to the sales side of things.
Yeah.
Not only did it bring a lot of great education and relationships and people, the internships were huge. I mean, that's something
Oh,
you can
God,
still
yeah.
leverage as one of the
Yeah.
key elements that helped my career move along. But just the credibility of what this school and this degree and engineering degrees in general provide to give, like, what, that person's interested, they're motivated,
Yeah.
they're willing to learn, they have the aptitude to drive it. It's still incredibly valuable. Now, the economics are challenging beyond what I can remember, but it's still huge, right?
Well,
to do that.
here, but what you said, I think, is very important. The willingness to learn. In other words, the ability to sit here and figure some crap out.
Yep.
That you don't have all the answers, and I can't just Google it or ask AI for it. I've got to go figure it out. I've got to take something, that a skill I don't currently have, and I got to learn it. And maybe I got to learn it in a short period of time.
Which is key too, right? Yeah, exactly.
Which is. And actually, okay, so this is interesting. We just had a conversation here. It's been 2 or 3 weeks. And I was in Capstone. And I was doing the technical advising for mechanical. And, I'm sitting around the table with like the dozen mechanicals and, one of the students, one of the leaders, good guy, solid kid. All right. And he's AGC, he's one of the officers in AGC and known him a long time. Good, solid kid. And it's a week till this is due though. And he's asking me a question that he should have worked out a long time
Maybe
ago.
before a week before.
Yeah, maybe before a week before. Okay. And so, but here's the thing. I know because he's asking it, probably out of that dozen, maybe half of them are probably have the same thing, but they don't have the guts to ask it. And so I came down on him pretty hard. And I'm literally like, this is in the Capstone lab. I'm like, what in the hell are we doing? Have this conversation a week before this is due.
Fair. I mean, right?
I was like, here's what you got to do. Over the course of this weekend, you need to figure this out. You need to come and tell me on Monday. You need to get your shit together, because if not, I will see you here in fall. I don't care if you've got a job.
It's a nice stick you got to swing there.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Nice.
But it's a real one.
Well, it's very consistent with what our industry has, right? It's important.
Exactly.
Deadlines are
Exactly.
happening. Owners,
Deadlines
if you
are
miss something, you lose your job. I mean,
Right.
truly. And it's a little more because there's.
Yeah.
But that's important, right? You got to meet your deliverables.
So we had our review on that here just this past week, right? And
The Capstone reviews?
The Capstone
Oh, nice,
review.
okay.
And he did just fine. He did just fine. It was like, wasn't exceptional, wasn't bad. It was
If you're just
solid.
finding this out, it's just,
Yeah,
your C is in the mail.
Yeah. But afterwards, I asked him, so it's time to get it right. I'm like, why I did that, don't you? He's like, well, I'll be honest, I was pretty pissed afterwards. I had to go cool down for an hour. And I was like, oh yeah, why are you so mad? He goes, well, it felt like you didn't care and you were telling me to F off. It's like, no, you heard it wrong. I'm like, you're looking at it wrong. I was telling you to pull your shit together. Those are different conversations.
Yeah.
The first one implies I don't care. This is wrong. By telling you to get your shit together, it means I do care and I don't want to fail you.
If you didn't hear from me, that means I don't care, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And it was a good conversation to have, because you know what? It's what he needed at that moment.
Sure.
And you know what he did? He figured it out. A lot of stuff that should have gotten
And
done
probably
before.
helped his counterparts too.
Right?
That were
Well, of course it did.
Yeah,
and
sure.
that's why, and I told him, I said, the reason I had to do it to you is that you're a leader in AGC.
Yeah.
The other students are looking at you for answers. You're the one going, I don't know what to do. I had to verbally crush you because everyone else had to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't about you. It was about you being a leader, and you're taking one for the team, and so I got to give it to you.
Good for you. And it's this how many 15, 17 years in,
Yeah.
in this.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. What is the format of the capstone, by the way, now? Because we had to design something in Revit at the time when it was in its early infancy.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, my God, look how old you are. Look how old you are.
No,
You're
Revit's still there,
Revit.
but not what I was drawing. I promise that. What's it look like today?
Okay. So capstone, we have the project management capstone, and then we have what I was doing is the design build capstone. Did you take it with Beth Hartman?
Beth was she ran the show. Yep.
Okay, what I'm talking about is the design build. So we've got some different instructors now. Like for design build, really good guy with lots of experience. He retired from Swinnerton out there in California, and now he's like, I need something. Moving back to Iowa, and I need something to do.
Good thing, yeah.
So he's doing that, and we give him a project, and they break it up into disciplines. Mechanical, electrical, structural, transportation, lead. Like site work, and,
soils, geotech.
Yeah, all the geotech stuff. So it's composed of civils and construction engineers, and they've got to engineer a solution, and then each specialty has a technical advisor, which is what I was doing, where it's like, okay, you got to design this. I'm your supervisor. I'm not here to do it for you. I'm here to grade you.
Yeah.
But the role is, we have a conversation along the way, and the way engineering is supposed to work is you're supposed to do some work, and you're supposed to come and ask questions. And I'm supposed to give you some guidance and turn you loose, and you go do some work, and you come back and you ask questions. And the reason I was, frustrated with that one is that these are questions I should have been asking.
Process questions, not result questions.
January. Yeah. This should be a January or maybe early February.
Do I need the duct work as part of my?
Exactly. It's like what So anyway, my point is that's all good stuff, but really the focus of it is the learning how to figure it out.
Yeah,
and that is one thing that, in my own biased opinion, I think we do a pretty good job of here. Because we focus so much on teamwork and the figuring it out and how are you going to get a solution that maybe you don't know how to do, and that's the whole point.
Well, and it's aligned with what is happening in the real world. You have to collaborate with the structural guy. And a lot of times I'm seeing as a challenge that we've been able to engage in, whether it's in capstone or now in my career, is a lot of contractual responsibilities in the job tend to silo people's focus, and they're still so important. The ability to maneuver through that early and create the pain points of the challenge and understand. You don't have to be an expert. One of the guys that work for us is like, I'm not an engineer, but I play one on TV. I love when he says that because it's true. But you don't have to be an expert in those spaces, but be aware of what they do. These guys are going to face that their whole career, no matter what they decide to do.
Well, it's not going to get easier. It's only going to get worse.
And more complicated, right?
I mean, look at the size of projects today versus when you went in. In 2010, the idea of a $5 billion project.
And now that doesn't even bat an eye, man. It's crazy.
I remember
50 bats, and it's crazy.
One of my friends that I graduated with in the 90s, he's one of the executives at DPR, and I remember him coming and talking to me about we had a bid on this hospital. It was $1 billion. We crossed the $1 billion project mark. Right? And I was like...
He was surprised and shocked, right?
Yeah. I mean, this has been years.
Yeah,
this has been several years now. And I remember him telling me, I'm like, $1 billion hospital? That's a thing? You know.
Now they're building a $2 billion one in Iowa.
In Iowa.
Yeah.
Wait, where's that one?
On the east side of the state. University of Iowa's healthcare group has got one of... Scope is climbing to that kind of a dollar value right now. It's large.
Really?
Yeah, it's big.
It's $2 billion?
It's going to get there probably, close to it. If not quite, it'll be close to that threshold. It's 1.8 million square feet. I mean, it's sizable.
Where's that at?
Just
outside. It's got to be Iowa City?
Outside of Iowa City, part of their healthcare system. And that's a major one right outside of their typical scope. But I mean, that stuff's right in our backyard now. And it's
Iowa City.
Yeah.
I mean, not Mayo Clinic.
No.
Not the research, Jude's network,
The fake school on the other side of the state is doing something.
Exactly. The Unreal School. Yeah. They're probably mostly engineers from us.
They probably are too,
Right. But no, you're right. It's like, a $2 billion hospital in the state of Iowa. And it's like, oh my Lord,
Yep.
Well, but that's the environment they're going into.
It is. And to your point, the competition for the people to manage or build it is growing, and the need to be nimble and create, because that's one of the biggest problems is to, how do we, you're talking about solving issues, how do we solve that? That's the next big challenge is how do we get the people and the resources to do this consistently, because the demand is just growing, not going anywhere.
Yeah,
right?
It's not going anywhere.
No,
it's not going anywhere because
up.
we haven't even talked about, so for every one of these $5 billion data centers, well, that's 500 megawatts or more of power getting sucked off the grid. Where does all this come from?
Yeah, it's mentioned earlier. I'm glad we're circling back. It is the number one bottleneck. We see supply chain, material, and labor.
Do you remember in class? You probably don't. You probably don't. But I've been saying this for a very, very, very long time in my class. I always say this in Connie 352. It's like when I say the biggest issue of your careers will be energy. And I've said that for a very long time, and I'm quite certain I'm not wrong.
No, I remember you saying my intellect was going to be that, but thankfully we've overcome that, so that coaching has gone. I don't remember the energy piece, but that said, it was coming to a head regardless. What I think, though, and correct me, no one saw this part coming, and so it either expedited it or got it to a spot that we were not ready for. And we mentioned like the liquid cooling on that now that we need it. That's now here. The power challenges we're faced with is here today. And it's one of the biggest things stopping these things from executing moving forward, right?
Fascinating to me. Did you see there was an announcement from India just yesterday that the India Department of whatever it is, energy or whatever, that India produced and consumed, oh gosh, I'm going to get this wrong.
No one's fact checking.
A billion tons of coal, a million tons. For the first time ever, they went over the 1 million tons of coal.
And if that's coming from India and that's the first time they hit it, that tells you how big that number is.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. I hope I got that right. But, here, fact check me later and then don't tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point is, whatever it was, it was a record amount of coal production, and therefore they didn't produce it for no reason. Consumption in the year, and almost all of that is going into power production.
Yeah, but probably almost exclusively, I would wager.
Probably, I would wager. I would wager. You're right. Wager you're right.
So it's challenging. It's a topic for a different day. Is the source of coal is energy and its impact, right?
Yeah.
But that demand is probably being exacerbated here to a degree because of all the manufacturing and, more importantly, mission critical data center development here. Yeah. We're going to have this similar capacity problem that we're going to have to evaluate. Hopefully it's not coal, but something we're scrimmaging a little bit on the way in is whether it's natural gas or even nuclear. Right? Is a big thing. And some of it's not the traditional method, but privatized on-site energy. And I'm curious what you've seen in that.
Well, look at last fall. I was reading something online, and Westinghouse has gotten the approval for a 5 megawatt nuclear power plant, right? And I was like, 5 megawatt. I'm like, that is tiny. It's like, why? That's nothing.
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that? Yeah. Why would you do that? And then I was talking to Ginny. I'm like, this has got to be going to what? Data centers, right? Ginny's like, oh my gosh, I had not heard of this. And we were reading it, and she goes, yeah, it's got to be data centers. Because they're talking about how the whole thing is as big as like a semi truck. And then the space that it needs on a site is like an acre.
Yep.
And I was like, yeah, this is Westinghouse doesn't design that if they haven't already sold the idea to a lot of very eager customers.
And it's now I don't know, because it's progressing and there's limited things. We're talking earlier about the Victaulic's role in that. It's still water, it's still pipe in certain instances, but anywhere there's water, we can simplify it. But there's steam and it's unique, but that particular thing is nuclear potentially, right? And you're bringing that to a space where traditionally you'd have, I don't know what a traditional power plant is with nuclear. It's hundreds of megawatts whatever it is. But to do 5 on a site is specific. It's fit for purpose, right? And you get unique players, whether it's Westinghouse or people locally I've been talking to, looking at it, to develop these things. So we're talking about on-site or off-site manufacturing, build a trailer or whatever and drop it to power this, because the grid is not going to, NPPD, for example, in Nebraska, saying, hey, we can't take another one in Lincoln. How are you going to evaluate that? These are the alternatives. So I think it's coming, and I think we're going to get a lot of flavors of it.
Did Nebraska Power tell them that?
I think in one area in Lincoln, they had some qualification, and that was one of the things that stopped the development. And it's good for the economy, but it has the negative impact. But you're growing the jobs and all these things, but that it's as invaluable as it can be. In that instance, like, hey, we just don't have the grid capacity right now for this. So we're going to have to either push it off.
Where do they?
Right. Or come up with your own solution. And that's what people are doing now, right? Yeah. But it's exciting to see. And also I've seen, the nuclear thing, not just, and nuclear waste is a problem, but we're seeing, can we use nuclear waste, which is like 90% as effective as new, raw, virgin nuclear,
it just needs refined.
And refine it and use it. So we have a resource to then use recycled nuclear, which is a problem we have currently. And it's becoming kind of a credible cycle. We're a ways out, though, it looks like, full deployment yet.
Yeah, we probably are. But here's the deal. There's no free lunch.
No.
There's not. I mean, the one, first law of thermodynamics, I can't get something for nothing. Second law, I can't even break even. If you want bacon, somebody's got to grow a pig. It's going to smell. If you want power, there's waste. And I don't care if we were talking coal or natural gas or even wind turbines, there is waste.
Indeed.
There is waste and there is danger. All right. People die maintaining wind turbines. Resources are used with wind turbines. There's not a free lunch there.
No, indeed.
There's a waste. So our world's desire for electricity is insatiable. Look at the difference in power consumption, say in the 80s. From 80 to 90, 81 to 91, what would the demand on the power grid have done? Go up a little. More people got home computers. That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
Nintendos and Ataris.
Nintendos and Ataris. Yeah. Maybe the first Apples.
8-track. I think that was a heavy load. Yeah.
No, stop it. Now you're making fun. It was cassettes by that point. Okay. And then in the 90s, everything moved to CDs. And about the time you got your favorite music on CDs, now you could download them. Right? You remember Napster?
Yeah.
God, you are old.
I do remember that. It's the Lars Ulrich, isn't he the one that had the? Yeah, I remember. I got into it just after, so I was disappointed, but I still found ways to illegally download music, so let's not forget about that. On CDs and burn them, but yeah, we've gotten past that now, right?
Oh, we have. And now, but my point is, there was no data centers. There was no grid ties. There wasn't this insatiable desire. Now with AI, there is no upper limit. There's none. The only question is, where's the power come from?
Yeah.
All right. So it's going to be. I'm still going to stand by my statement. I think students of today, their biggest issue is going to be energy. The biggest issue of buildings, the biggest issue of society, it's going to be energy.
Yeah, I think it's not unfair. That and or water as part of that infrastructure is going to be some measure of a challenge, right? And being judicious about it now, while also being industrious and innovative is important because we're at the time that's needed. So let's do it right. Ideally,
clean water and energy are the same thing. It takes energy to get clean water.
100%.
We don't have enough of either one.
Right.
So where do we put these monstrous data centers? The reason we're putting them in Nebraska and Iowa is that they have space and they have resources.
Yep.
What happens when all of our power is being consumed by them? Every time Microsoft puts another building on their site, it is consuming the amount of electricity equivalent to every residential consumer in Ames, Iowa. Ames is not the smallest city in Iowa.
No.
Probably remember that, right?
Yeah.
I know you've been gone for a while.
Yeah, I had to look. I was on Wikipedia today when I got back. I do remember.
But so my point is that's a decent sized city, and then you're like building after building after building after building. And you're like, whoa, and this is why
it's like a bunch of Las Vegases getting slapped, and it's
crazy.
It is. It's nuts. Yeah,
it is. So I mean, it's definitely. I guess the point of all this longer discussion is that this is definitely a time where there is tons of opportunity for young people.
Yeah,
whether that's in construction or engineering, sales or design. I mean, you did construction and then you did sales. I've done construction and design.
Right.
There's opportunity for people.
There is. And I don't get to learn what we're talking about now without being out there and engaging with these stakeholders of projects unless I'm in this role. And so we mentioned what I like. That's what I love almost the most, besides the people I work with, is the ability to learn, expose, and bring value to those challenges, because they're not going anywhere. And construction's kind of a slow boat as it relates to innovation overall in an industry.
Well,
we need it, right? It's going to be force fed here by the dollars that are coming in from these stakeholders, and it's fun to be a part of that, right? So
it is. It's crazy. The changes that have happened in your career are, if you would look at, you've been in 15 years. If you look at the 15 years before, the pace would have seemed snail-like.
Don't you think the 15 before that the same way? And
yes,
handwriting, drawings,
absolutely.
and
well, yeah. Okay, so this is seriously going to date me. When I was an intern at Waldinger in 95, I was sitting near the drafters. My intern desk I was sharing with other interns, and we were right by the drafters. The drafters were like, "Hey, you think this AutoCAD thing is a fad?" Or, and one of them was like, "I'm not giving up my pencil. This is just a fad. This is just fad. This is just a fad. We're not going to stop drawing by hand." It's like, who's gonna, what was his comment was literally like, who's going to spend the money on all of us having computers? They're like, it's not going to happen. Right. And
how long did that take? Not even a decade after that.
No, not even a decade. That was 95. And then, when I went to work at Black & Veatch in 97, we were trying to go paperless back then and failed, but, they were trying.
Yeah.
And, they had some of the first 3D modeling for power plants in 97 and 98. So you had the local contractor still hanging on to the hand drafting in 95, and then the large ones doing 3D modeling in its infancy, nothing like today. But it's in its infancy, they were doing 3D modeling for power plants in 97, 98.
Yeah, and what's funny, that's a good example of mentioning how the speed of construction.
Yeah.
People, how their bread was buttered to what got them there is what they know, what they believe in, how they were trained. Yeah. And that's part of the challenge. Whether it's for us, I grew up welding and flanging, right? Like, this is a new idea, strategy, or, hey, I want to go out and measure this space with plumb bobs. I don't want to use a laser scanner anymore.
Like, who trusts those?
But this is just going to force feed it. The economy of scale and economy of construction is going to drive it. But that's how you want to leave those agents behind, because they're really important for their expertise. So
what's funny to me about this is that when you really think about it, if we go back to those 90s, the labor on site, plumbers and stuff, we had lots. We need extra labor. We just go down to the shop hall, grab whoever's on the bench. How many cities do you go to where there's nobody on the bench?
Personally, I would say more than not have little to none. Now, they're getting better. Outreach has improved, but in general, the bench is weak. Not weak, the bench is lean. I would say that in most areas, right? And some, they haven't had anybody on the bench for years. Yeah, and then open shop comes.
The idea, for people new to construction, if I was to say, how deep is the bench at the union hall, they'd be like, what do you mean?
What is that?
I don't understand. What's a bench? It's like, well, the bench is guys that are in the union that aren't currently working, and they're waiting for work for someone to pick them up, and they're like, that's a thing. It has been at different times in the past, yes.
I would be shocked if most major markets have that issue at all. Like, I think everyone's more than busy to a degree that they can't handle, whether you're in the union or non-union. Well, it's a race for people,
especially in the trades that you're in, plumbing. But here's my point: is that today a professional, like a journeyman plumber or professional electrician, is so valuable. We've got to do as much as we can to simplify their lives so that they aren't fooling around with plumb bobs and strings and whatever. The tools, the time-saving tools, like this is how Victaulic even came to be, right?
Sure.
Right? Those things are serving. It used to be, plumbers used to be so suspicious of that new stuff because they're just trying to get rid of us. They're just trying to get rid of us. They're just trying to do. This is why, like the city of Chicago resists probably to this day, PVC pipe.
Yeah, they galvanized threaded 6-inch pipe.
Yeah. So the day they're like, well, that's just trying to lay off us plumbers. It's like, today, it's like, no, you're too valuable.
Yeah, we can't have that. We want more of you, no matter what I'm selling you, because we just need more of you there, right? Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That mentality's changing again. It's just, we're at the beginning. I mean, it's going to just get better or worse depending on what side you're on for the next 2 decades.
I like what you said. This is a second industrial revolution, and it's a lot quieter.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how much people. I mean, God, I know I'm learning. You know, just from talking to alumni and people that come in here to recruit, and I'm like, oh my Lord.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like,
it's hard to wrap your head around.
It
Really.
is,
and it's a very
it is.
clandestine, especially in the mission critical side, because there are a lot of our protectionism of their stuff,
gosh, yeah.
which I want to is fair, right? But from our space, tilt up walls and put pipe in and build construction. It's relatively straightforward, and so the size and scale doesn't matter who's running that wrench. It needs to be installed, and so keep what's in your rack to yourself, right? But the industry as builders is going to need to adapt and build that stuff. So
you know what's funny is first time. Oh gosh, who was it? Who was the first big data center in Central Iowa?
I think it was
it Microsoft?
I think
or was
it was Facebook before they were Meta.
It was Facebook. Yeah, before they were
down
Meta.
in Altoona. I think.
I think that was the first big one, right? And it was so funny when that come in. You know, because you were about that time. Well, anyway, when they first come in with this,
it was like 2012, I think, 11, 12. Yep.
Okay, so you know, they're like, okay, we're going to spend $500 million in Central Iowa. Don't tell anyone. Right. It's Iowa, guys. You can't drop $500 million in at the edge of
no one's
Altoona,
gonna notice.
and no one's going to notice, and no one's going to talk.
The job site trailer is bigger than any building there.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I'm like, guys. I'm like, I don't know where you're from, but you can't build that kind of project in Iowa and not have people talk about it. They're going to know it at the Casey's, while you're like...
Definitely at the Casey's. That's where most business happens, I think, in some of these places. But yeah, it's but you got to protect certain parts of it and but also we're seeing more and more collaboration even amongst, quote, competitors in that business because construction is getting so hard and the path to success is getting tougher. Like people just want to know what's the best way to do this. And it's an arms race, but it's also let's help each other because no one has enough of whatever they need right now, right?
No one does.
No one does.
It is crazy days, right? And it's got to be odd for you since you started right at the end of that recession and everybody's like, oh my gosh, construction companies are closing and some are going, I mean, bellwether names going out of business and laying off
big
people.
Ones,
laying off people and was it 2008 or 2009? Like the class before you, a bunch of Connie students had jobs that got rescinded.
Yeah,
and they were like, "Oh my!"
They were living happy and ready to go.
Yeah,
and
they're
then
like they're about ready to move.
A lot got pulled. It was actually kind of a sad time for my cohorts that were a little older. That was rough, right?
It was rough. It was rough. Oh man, I definitely felt for them. But here's the good news is if they stuck it out, today they're probably got promoted way faster. If they stuck it out.
Or like the point of me being, there's other avenues than the traditional ones to go in demand for people like the folks that are in this class, right? Is to, I can explore that as an alternative option to still keep that piece of what I love about construction and maybe evaluate something else. So not only are those roles more available, there's just more of them in demand for the people that are coming through these walls.
All right. So you're 15 years into a career. You've still got, you're not even halfway through it. Right. Where do you see yourself going from here? I don't know. I mean, maybe that's an unfair question.
It's a good question. What's fun is a lot of challenges within my current role. And the other nice thing about sales is, is the more you do, the better opportunities you have financially and grow that. I see a lot of opportunity what we're focusing on now, which is we've done really well with mechanical contractors over the years, converting and working with them to be partners. We have a whole landscape of new clients potentially, whether they're owners of these data centers or life sciences, pharmaceuticals, and going out and exploring because we've barely scratched the surface ourselves. And so I'm excited for this revolution to be a part of it in unique ways.
Yeah.
I like being on the sales side of things in construction. I like my organization too a lot.
Yeah.
I'm happy here and I'm excited to see what opportunities bring because to your point about moving up the ladder and opportunities, our organizations offer the same sort of thing. So really we're looking for more leaders than we even are people to do the entry-level jobs because it's the bottleneck that we have. And so it's exciting to explore that and bring value. And I like what we're focusing on and how we're bringing unique things to new people. So it's a new story for those guys and it's been fun.
All right, so you guys hiring? You hiring new students?
Very much hiring. New students are a challenge. That said, I'll be honest, for those that are interested, I was kind of not part of it, but I at least started getting the gears going for reevaluating, assessing our internship program.
Ooh, good idea.
To bring people in.
Good
and we kind of got away from it for a few years, but we have a lot of really good people in our organization that I work with that came up that way. And then outreach at places like Iowa State, which is kind of the reason I wanted to come too, is just put some feelers and thought out for that, right? We're working through that.
Here, if you want, if you send me some job openings, right? You're an MCA contractor, right?
Well, we are partner with that. We're in MCA though, for sure.
You are not an MCA contractor. I use the wrong word. You are an industry partner
Yeah.
that is a full member in MCA.
Absolutely, nationally,
so
correct.
if you hire an intern from our MCA chapter, I want to say you guys are eligible for like $1,000 incentive for it.
I don't think we knew that.
I think you should look into it.
Is that to the individual that recruited them or to the organization? Because
I'm not sure how that works.
I'm kidding. It doesn't matter. But that said, that's that level, because those guys are good at recruiting people and I don't want to take away from our good customers. They need good people too.
Right.
But if this is of interest, we should be better at that than we are, and that's good to know that there's that level of incentive.
I tell you what, I think, and I'm biased, but I think MCA has done a better job of recruiting students into their industry than, let's compare it to maybe AGC or some of the other trade associations. I know I'm biased because I've been doing this with MCA for a lot of years, but like, the national convention we were just at, they treat the students. Is that in
Austin?
Great. Yeah, this one was in Austin.
Yep.
Right. They treat the students just amazing. We won Iowa State, our little chapter here. We got 3 national scholarships for our.
I think I saw that. I'm like, that's congratulations. That's awesome.
Right?
That's really cool.
And I mean, that is a great move because you get money like that to students, and they're like, as students are like, oh my gosh, there's like jobs and scholarships, and holy crap, I should check this out. What I would suggest, if you send me, like a job posting, I will print it out and hand it around. Now, probably better in fall.
Sure.
Almost everyone, not everyone. Actually, now that I think about it, maybe you should send me something.
We're always looking for good people, right?
So send it to me, and I'll hand it out to the students to see if anybody's interested in interns.
Good. And if some markets you need to have more experience, whatever. Like in the BD side where I'm at, there's more exposure, but we are growing our pipeline and demand, and we have markets with a lot of matured people to mentor, and like there's a lot of exploration we could have for career path.
If I could make a suggestion on internship program, do not be afraid to hire freshmen, because the really good ones are gone by the time you're looking at junior and senior.
Well, and to that point, we're not just sales, right? We're a large organization. We have 180 people in our VDC team.
Yeah.
Doing modeling. We have 35 PE licensed engineers doing pipe and structural design.
Really?
We do pipe design, pipe stress analysis, all these things. And a bunch of manufacturing arms, like operational manufacturing. Like there's a lot of stuff that we're doing. Well, it's good to know that there's interest, or it'd be good to present that to your team, right?
Well, here, if you guys think about it, come to, like our engineering career fair, but we have just a mechanical industry night right around the career fair.
Okay.
Where industry people come and we just have a social. We have beers.
I love that.
And we have beers and drinks and stuff at like we did at Sweet Caroline's last time. And all the students.
You still do it in the spring and the fall?
Yep.
Is that this? Okay.
Yep. Yes, we do. But we do this industry night like we just did it the night before the career fair, so that people that were in town could join in, and you can talk to our students, and all of them there are either in NECA or MCA.
Cool.
So that's exactly the target audience of students that you'll need. So let me know.
That's good. And I'll present to you some of the opportunities, and the outreach is important. And it's good to be back here and involved in this awesome place.
Oh, man. You know what I need?
Yeah.
What I need? I need a Victaulic like pullover or something.
I got you.
Class.
I got you. Small, medium. What
yeah, like I look like a small.
Yeah.
Like I look like a small.
I got you.
How about double extra large?
You got it.
Okay.
And if we ever do anything for your group, we'll have seriously I could do outreach with Turner. I saw Turner's evaluating the next AGC thing or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That would be a fun thing to explore in the future too, is being more involved on the education or project example side. Yeah. But I got you on that one for sure. I'll get you some good swag and a hat to go with it. So
yeah, I need some of that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I tell you what, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah, it's awesome, Brad. Thanks for doing this. It's great.
I know it's been a long time since you've been back here, so I appreciate you making
good
the trip.
Excuse. It's nice.
Good excuse.
I was going to get Pita Pit, but I don't see it there anymore. I think Mr. Burrito is no longer. It's like it used to be Flying Burrito, but I guess it's illegal now. So the old hits are no longer available.
Yeah. Okay. You know what you need to do? You need to go down East Lincoln Way. There's a really good taco truck, Rico's Tacos.
Okay.
All right. Great Plains Sauce and Dough is still here though.
Yeah, that's the one on Main Street, right?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. And then
Aunt Mod's is the other one that I remember, but I never could afford it. So
yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah, that's not student food. Yeah. Cafe Bordelaire still has a great Long Island iced tea.
I could use one of those after.
All
I was looking at early morning, but thank you for the advice, man. This was
Hey.
Appreciate it, Brad. This is fun.
All right. Well, thank you so much. All right.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So that's going to wrap it up for another episode of Office Hours. It'll take a little bit for me to get this edited and get it online, but we sure appreciate it. It'll be there for students to check out and alumni in the days, years, weeks to come. Who knows? It's on the internet, so it'll never go away.
Yeah, great.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Well.
All right.